Alright, so in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to cut a cursive italic nib. And I'm going to be using some Jinhao X450s to produce this demonstration. So here I have, this is the stock Jinhao as it comes to me from, I buy them on eBay. And they're pretty smooth, but they're also pretty uniform. So you can see my downstroke is about the same as a cross stroke. And I actually have a measurement sheet here. So if we take a look at this, we can see that my downstroke is about 0.4 millimeters. My cross stroke is, it's about 0.3 millimeters on stock. 0.4 down, 0.3 across, stock nib. Now I'm going to show you how to take that and turn it into a cursive italic. So you can see that the downstroke is much wider on these compared to the cross stroke. Significant change. And if we take a look at the nib width chart, let's take a look here. Our downstroke is, it looks a little bit larger than 0.5. I'd say we're about 0.6 down now. And our cross looks like about 0.2. So stock was 0.4 down, 0.3 across. After we did the cursive italic cut, we moved our downstroke up to 0.6, and the cross has narrowed to 0.2. And that's a pretty good conversion. Okay, so here I want to show you how I start the actual cut. So I have loaded in my Dremel a diamond cutoff wheel. And if you look at my video on my workbench, you'll see that I kind of go over all of the tools that I use. This diamond cutoff wheel I got off of Widget Supply, and this is what I use to actually perform the cuts on the top and underside of the nib. So this is a dry cut. I have the pen here. Pen's empty, no ink in it whatsoever. I'm going to use my foot pedal to control the speed of the Dremel. I'm wearing safety glasses, and I'm going to lean my head down so that as I'm looking at the cutoff wheel, I'm making sure that I can view it in a entirely parallel manner. Meaning that if you're looking at the cutoff wheel far above it, you can see both the back side and the front side of the wheel. And same thing if you go below it, you can see a back side and a front side. But as you move your eye level to go perfectly parallel, the front side and back side of the cutoff wheel kind of disappear, and you just see the flat disc. That's how I know that my eye line is entirely parallel with my cutoff wheel. Once I've accomplished that, I then present the nib to it without actually making contact yet, but close enough into that parallel cutoff wheel that I can now do the same thing with the nib. And what I'm going to do is rotate the pen in my hand, and what I'm doing is looking at the feed itself, and I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm rotating it until it looks to be exactly parallel, so that when I then lower it onto the cutoff wheel, I know that I'm presenting a parallel pen to the parallel cutoff wheel, and I'm going to get a straight cut out of it. So once I've got all of my angles lined up and everything looks straight, I'm going to apply pressure with my foot on the foot pedal and spin up the Dremel. And you'll see that I'm not going to give it much speed. These cuts happen fast, and you want to work slowly with very gentle pressure. All we're trying to do is level off the bottom edge of the nib. From the factory, it's a little too round. It's like a ball. And we're just trying to cut the ball to make it a flat surface on bottom and a flat surface on top. So here we go. I'm just going to give it a little pressure on the foot pedal, spin it up, and I'm going to drop the nib now onto the wheel itself. And that's it. That bottom side is cut. It's really that simple. I'm just going to flip the pen around now and I'm going to perform the same cut on the top side. I'm just shaving off a little extra material from the ball shape to turn it into a flat shape for the cursive italic. Same thing, make everything parallel. Make sure I can't see both sides of the cutoff wheel. I cannot see both sides of the nib, or I mean the feed. Everything looks in line to me. Apply some pressure and drop the nib down. And that's really it. That's all it takes to cut off the top and bottom sides. It's that simple. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I'm going to cut the face of the nib. We've completed our cut on the top side and we've completed our cut on the bottom side. We have flat surfaces there. But on the actual face of it, the very point, we still have that rounded edge. And we need to square that off as well. So we're trying to make a perfectly rectangular shape on the face of the nib. We need to square this off. Now, what some people do, and what I actually do with gold nibs, is I will present this face down right onto the cutoff wheel like this. For soft metals like gold, and with a fine disc on here, that does work. But with hard steel, like these Jinhaos, especially this cheap Chinese steel, it's very brittle. And every time I've tried to do this, all I found is that the very small surface area of the nib catches onto the wheel and it chips and breaks and it destroys the nib. It's not even worth trying. So over here I have my Arkansas stone, and this is where I'm going to shape the face of the nib manually using an Arkansas stone. And I just have it soaking in some water right now. These are wet stones. You need a lubricant. I'm not familiar with oil stones. I think that it's something you possibly could do, but I've only ever used water as a lubricant, and that's where my expertise is. So I'm soaking this Arkansas stone in water, and that's all you need as a lubricant for this application. I'm going to pull up a towel here, just something to steady my stone with. So I'm going to pull out the stone. And what I want to do is cut the face of the nib. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present the pen perpendicular to the face of the stone because I want a perfectly rectangular cut. Remember, we're trying to achieve 90-degree angles on our cuts. We've already done the top and bottom. Now we need to do the front edge. So we need to make a 90-degree angle, and that's only achieved by an absolutely perpendicular presentation of the nib to the grinding stone. So I'm going to grasp this in a comfortable way where I can maintain the angle, and I'm going to just apply gentle pressure and move from the front to the back, just like that. So I'm just going to keep doing that over and over, and I can feel that there's a lot of vibration in here. I don't think it's maintaining steady pressure. I'm going to lower my grip down and actually grasp the nib and the feed together, and I'm just going to repeat. And I'm just going to keep doing this, maybe 30 strokes, maybe 60 strokes, and check my work until I have achieved the level that I like. I'm checking my work with my 10x loop. I can see there's still quite a bit of rounded edge there from the factory. So back to the stone. I'll keep working at it. Okay, so I've been checking my work, and the face of the nib is starting to look much more square. There's still a tiny bit of a bevel left from the factory, but I'm okay with that since we are creating a cursive italic today and not a crisp italic, which is perfectly 90-degree edges. The cursive italic does maintain a little bit of a bevel edge on each side, so I'm okay with leaving that there. So our next step is to smooth the edges. We could write this pen as is, but it's going to have some pretty sharp angles, and it will be quite unpleasant. It's probably going to dig into the paper substantially. So we need to now smooth out those corners that we've made. We made those 90-degree sharp corners, which gives us our great downstroke, broad downstroke and narrow cross-stroke, but we need to smooth that out. So I'm going to turn the stone, and what we're going to do is present the nib to the stone fairly flat, as flat as we can, and then we're going to drag it back while also rotating up. And that is going to create our smoothed beveled edge. So I will do that. I'm going to place my index finger on the top of it to kind of apply some downward pressure. And then using my wrist, I'm going to rotate the back of the pen up as I move backwards, like this. And then you can do the same from the various different angles. So, and it doesn't take that many strokes to create your beveled edge. You don't want to go crazy, or you're going to end up with the factory ball shape that we just worked to remove. So then same thing, you want to do it from each side as well, only a few times per. Same for this side. And then also the top side as well. Check your work again using your 10x loop and make any adjustments as necessary. Things are looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do is move on. This is a hard Arkansas stone. I'm going to graduate up from that into a true hard or a black Arkansas stone, even though it's not actually black, but it is a true hard stone. Apply some water for some lubricant, and I'm just going to repeat those same steps using the true hard stone. And this is going to smooth out the final shape for us. The previous stone was mostly for general shaping. This is going to really polish that edge, and it's what's going to make our nib feel smooth. The previous stone cut our shape to give us the general shape that we want, but it's going to feel very rough. This stone isn't really used for shaping anymore. Once you've got your shape, you use this to then smooth the stroke so that it really feels like a luxury writing instrument. It really feels like the nib isn't even on the paper. It's polished so smooth that it just glides along the surface. That's what your hard stone is for. Things are looking pretty good for me. So I'm going to now move on to a pad of paper. I'm going to rinse the nib. I've been cutting this. There might be metal shavings, there might be stone dust in there. I'm going to rinse it out. Dry it off. Now I'm going to ink the pen. So let's see what we have. This was a completely factory before I started. Looks like we have a nice broad downstroke. Upstroke still puts down a nice amount of ink. Cross-stroke is thinner. It's not as thin as I would like. This tells me that I was not aggressive enough with my cuts on the bottom side and the top side, primarily the bottom side. Because when you're cutting the nib, it kind of has this ball shape on the end, and what we're trying to do is cut off the ball so that it just looks flat, so that we go to this there's no more ball. And really, we want a square edge like that. Because your writing surface is this point, right there. And on a real crisp italic, you've got 90 degrees. So your writing surface is tiny on that little corner. What we did with a cursive italic is rounded it ever so slightly, which increases the surface area there. So you get a narrower cross stroke. How sharp this angle is how narrow your cross stroke is. The sharper it is, the narrower your cross stroke. Ours is still pretty wide, which means this angle is a little too round. It's more like this when it should be like this. So to achieve that, we need to go back to the cutoff wheel and work on removing some of that material so that we have a sharper angle like this. Your downstroke width is simply controlled by how wide your nib is itself. And when you saw me shaping the nib on the face of the stone, that was grinding away some of the material. So if you have a nib that's kind of shaped like this, and you grind away some of the material. So from this point to this point, let's just say that's 0.5 millimeter. And if you grind some of it away to now it's here, you have increased the width of your nib. So now maybe this is 0.7 millimeter. That's all that controls the downstroke. It's that simple. The more you grind away from the face of the nib, the wider your downstroke. I'm pretty happy with that downstroke. I'm not so happy with the cross-stroke. So I'm going to empty the ink, go back to the cutoff wheel, and I'm going to reduce the material on the underside of the nib. All right, so as you can see, I went back to the Dremel, I made a few more additional cuts, and now we have quite a decent downstroke and upstroke. Those are quite thick, and very narrow cross strokes. This is perfect as a cursive italic. Now you can probably hear this in the paper. Let me show you. The paper is quite noisy. The pen itself is quite noisy. That's because we have not yet smoothed the nib. It writes just fine, but there is a lot of feedback. And that's residual from our very rough cuts on the Dremel, our rough cuts on the Arkansas stones. Even the true hard one won't get us a really polished, smooth edge. That's where the Micromesh comes in. So I'm going to now pull in the Micromesh sheet. This is 12,000 grit Micromesh. And you want to do this with lubricant. You can do it with just water. If you just pour water on the Micromesh, write in it, that works. I like to do it with ink in the pen. And the reason is I can run it on the Micromesh with my lubricant, which is the ink, and then I can immediately test it on the paper. I don't have to ink it to test it, which means I can go back and forth as needed. It's very convenient. So what I'm going to do is just by starting to draw some figure eights in the Micromesh. And I have a video on how to smooth nibs that kind of goes over it for more detail. I'm going to draw some figure eights here, and I'm going to rotate the pen around as I'm drawing the figure eights to kind of smooth all edges and to make it a generic shape for whoever might own this pen in the future. Since I don't know what their pen grip is and what angle they like to hold their pen, just smooth all edges and make it adjustable, or make it appropriate for any potential owner. And then from there, go back to your paper, and you might be able to hear this. It sounds a lot better and it feels a lot better. Now, since I'm a retailer and I sell these pens on my website, I would stop here because I don't know the pen grip of the purchaser. If you're doing this for yourself, and I'll continue to show you, you want to continue to smooth it in the general vicinity of how you hold your pen. So I kind of hold my pen in this type of grip, this type of angle. It's about 45 degrees. I'll continue to smooth it now more aggressively, continuing to rotate to the left and to the right to accommodate for rotation as I write. And if I were doing this for a customer, I would study the way they grip their pen, and I would just simulate it right here. I would copy their grip to smooth their pen. So then go back here. And it's starting to feel much, much smoother. So you've got your downstroke, upstroke, cross stroke. Check your diagonals. You can draw figure eights. Now notice when I'm drawing these figure eights, I'm looking at the right to left stroke at the top of the figure eight is not drawing ink. It's hard starting there. So I'm going to go back to the Micromesh here, and I'm going to copy that shape from right to left on the Micromesh. I'm not going to draw the full figure eight anymore because I don't want to over polish this. Just go right to left a few times. Go back here. And look at that. I don't have an issue there from right to left. So I can draw my figure eights without much issue. Still getting some skipping, like right there, it skipped a little bit. Right there, it skipped again. So same thing, it's trial and error. Smoothing the nib is honestly more of an art than a science. You just need to get a feel for it. And to be frank, steel nibs are harder to work with than gold nibs. I know they're cheaper and they're good to practice on. So if you can get good smoothing, cutting, and working with steel nibs, you'll find that gold nibs are much easier to work with, simply because they're a softer material. But so far, I think this is a pretty excellent effort. Got a great narrow cross stroke, nice wide downstroke. Now remember, these are medium nibs as they come from Jinhao. It doesn't get much wider than this. Taking a look at the width chart here, the one I showed you previously, we had 0.6 down, 0.2 across. This one, we're looking at, it looks wider than 0.5. I think we're on par with the 0.6 down. We're right here, 0.6 down on this one we just cut on video. Let's take a look at the cross stroke. We're a little bit thicker than 0.2. We're at 0.3. We're at 0.6 down, 0.3 across. Not bad for a Jinhao $3 pen. Cut it into a cursive italic, and for not much money, you can try out a cursive italic yourself and decide if you like this. Maybe this is a cut that you want to apply to one of your more expensive pens. Cursive italic gives you a nice flair to your writing. The Jinhaos are great applicants to test out the cut, so you don't have to commit to your expensive pen. It's not that much work to cut one to a cursive italic. It's very simple to use as long as you already have your Dremel tool and a stone to smooth the front of the nib. If you don't have a stone, you could try substituting with some really fine sandpaper. I've never done that myself. I can't guarantee or even recommend that it would work. But again, this pen was $3. You're not risking much. So give it a try. See what you think. If you've never cut a nib before, you will destroy this pen. I guarantee it. I've destroyed probably 10 or 20 pens already going through practicing how to work on nibs. It comes with the territory. You need to get to know how it feels, how it reacts, how much pressure to apply when you're cutting, how much pressure to apply when you're rubbing against the stone, against the smoothing paper, the Micromesh. All of that is muscle memory, and you just have to do it to learn it. So go on eBay, buy 10 of these, $3 a piece. You're not risking that much money. practice on them. If you like it, try it maybe on a more expensive pen. Maybe bring your Pelican M200 to it and give that a whirl. Just keep in mind that gold nibs is much softer than steel. So everything you've been doing on this Jinhao will go 10 times faster on gold. Slow down, take your time, evaluate every cut you make through your loop, and you should be good. These Jinhao steel pens are very cheap. They're very brittle. They break easily. If you can master cutting one of these, cutting a 14 karat gold nib should be a walk in the park for you. So that's it on the cursive italic. I look forward to showing you some more videos on some more complex cuts. Maybe we'll move on to a stub or needlepoint later. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Check out my website, pentuner.com, where I sell these Jinhaos for only $15 a piece with a cursive italic nib on them if you want to try them out. And thanks so much for watching. See you guys later.